What if one of the most controversial, unapologetic, and funniest animated shows of the 2000s wasn't just entertainment? What if it was actually a manual, a guide to understanding the world we're living in right now? I'm talking, of course, about the Boondocks. On the surface, it was a brilliant satire. A fish-out-of-water story about two kids from inner-city Chicago moving to the suburbs with their grandfather. But underneath the comedy, underneath the unforgettable characters and the lines we still quote today, the show's creator, Aaron McGruder, was giving us a masterclass in media literacy. He wasn't just making us laugh at the absurdities of the world. He was handing us the decoder ring to understand why the world is so absurd. He was showing us that so much of the chaos we see isn't an accident. It's a business model. The Boondocks didn't just predict the chaos of our modern media landscape. It explained the financial incentives behind it. This isn't a conspiracy theory about shadowy figures in a dark room. It's a repeatable, observable strategy that Aaron McGruder spelled out for us, plain as day, using animation as his textbook. The show argued that narratives, the stories we are told about ourselves and others, can be weaponized. It showed how these narratives can trap entire communities in a downward economic spiral. This is a loop, a feedback machine that creates a reality and then points to that reality as proof that the original story was true. Stay with me through this breakdown, because by the end of it, you'll not only see the blueprint McGruder laid out, but you'll have a practical three-step checklist to break free from the very media loop the show exposed. So, how does this work? The primary weapon, the engine of this entire system, is narrative. It's just a fancy word for storytelling. Stories are how we make sense of the world. They shape our beliefs, our biases, and ultimately, our outcomes. Think about it. If a group of people is consistently framed in stories as being brilliant, innovative, and constructive, what happens? Doors open for them. They receive investment capital. Their kids get into better schools. Society extends them a fundamental level of trust. The narrative creates a positive reality. Now, flip that. What happens if a group is relentlessly framed with stories of dysfunction, crime, and chaos? The opposite. Doors close. Capital dries up. Neglect becomes an acceptable, even logical policy. Why invest in a community that the narrative has already told you is a lost cause? The story of dysfunction is used to justify the very conditions that create dysfunction. This is the core of McGruder's satire. In the world of the Boondocks, the fictional network BET, or Black Entertainment Television, serves as a perfect stand-in for this entire incentive machine. The show portrays it as a network that profitably packages and sells stereotypes back to the very audience it claims to serve and represent. And the Freeman family embodies the central conflict. Huey, the radical intellectual child prophet, is the critic. He sees the mechanism clearly. He sees the strings being pulled. His younger brother, Riley, is the perfect consumer. He is fully bought into the culture being sold. He doesn't just watch the videos, he emulates them. He embodies the narrative. Their dynamic isn't just a sibling rivalry. It's the war for the soul of the community, happening right in Granddad's living room. This dynamic is put under a microscope in the legendary, and for years reportedly unaired, episode titled The Hunger Strike. This episode rips the mask off the entire operation and shows us the raw mechanics. In the story, Huey decides to protest BET, not just because he dislikes the content, but because he sees it as actively harmful. The show introduces a cartoonishly evil CEO for the network, a woman literally named Deborah Leavell. The satire is blunt for a reason. McGruder isn't trying to be subtle here. By making the villain so obvious, he's forcing us to stop debating the motives. Leavell's purpose is crystal clear: to dramatize how low-value, destructive content can be brilliantly marketed, but it's all a performance. The moment Deborah Leavell offers him a massive payout, a new TV show and a movie deal, he flips instantly. He abandons the protest, takes the money, and sells out the entire movement on live television. The point of the satire lands like a ton of bricks. For the operators of this machine, it's not about ideology. It's not about community. It's not about black or white. It's about incentives. It's about the money. Goodlove didn't have a change of heart. He had a business opportunity. And those incentives are the engine that powers the very loop the show spent its entire run exposing. For the sake of clarity, let's give it a name: the Ruckus Loop, named after the show's most tragic character, who we'll get to in a moment. Here's how the loop works, step by step. First, a simplified, often negative narrative is created and amplified by media platforms that profit from the engagement it generates. Think of the stereotypes sold by the fictional BET. Second, that constant narrative begins to shape broad public perception. If the only stories you ever see about a certain neighborhood are about crime, your perception of that neighborhood becomes crime. It doesn't matter if the vast majority of people there are just regular folks going to work and raising families. The narrative overwrites the reality. Third, that perception directly influences policy and investment. When city councils, corporate boards, and bank loan officers are saturated with that same narrative, their decisions reflect it. They are less likely to invest in businesses, fund schools, or approve loans in a community that perception has labeled as risky or dysfunctional. Fourth, that lack of investment and support dictates economic outcomes. Businesses shut down, schools deteriorate, opportunities vanish. The conditions in the community actually worsen. And here is the final, genius turn of the screw. Those worsening outcomes then appear to confirm the original negative narrative. The system can now point to the poverty and struggle it helped create as proof. He is the psychological endgame. He is what happens when a mind is completely and utterly colonized by hostile media. His thoughts are no longer his own. They are the echoes of the narrative. He sees Black people not as individuals, but as walking, talking embodiments of the stereotypes he consumes. He enthusiastically works to enforce the system, believing its lies are the fundamental truths of the world. Ruckus isn't just a joke to laugh at. He is a warning. He represents the soul-crushing destination of a journey fueled by self-hatred. A journey that begins with the passive consumption of a negative narrative. If this character feels eerily familiar in the landscape of 2025, if you see shades of him in online personalities or public figures, it's because the old loop didn't die. It just got automated. Magruder's warning was never about a single television channel. It was about the incentive structure that drives the creation of content. That structure is not only still here, it's been supercharged. Today, outrage for profit and engagement at all costs are the business models of our biggest social media platforms. The algorithm doesn't care if content is true, false, helpful, or harmful. It only cares if it gets a reaction. And what gets the strongest reaction? Outrage, fear, division. The mechanism is identical to the one in the Boondocks, just faster and more personal. Attention chases the most extreme stereotypes. Those stereotypes shape perception. That perception influences real-world actions, which in turn writes budgets and policies. The modern loop doesn't need a Deborah Leavell to approve a TV show. The algorithm does her job automatically, 24/7, promoting whatever caricature gets the most clicks, shares, and comments. The loop is now a self-perpetuating automated system that rewards the loudest, angriest, and most simplistic voices while bearing nuance and constructive conversation. This brings us back to the central, desperate question Huey asks throughout the series. What do you do when you can't do nothing, but there's nothing you can do? It's a question that speaks to the feeling of being trapped in a system so large and powerful that resistance feels futile. But Granddad, in his simple, often accidental wisdom, gives the only answer that matters. You do what you can. The Boondocks wasn't just a critique. It was a lesson in self-defense. It taught us to spot the loop, to see the strings, and to refuse the role the narrative assigns to us. Once you understand the game, you can stop playing your assigned part. You can't single-handedly destroy the machine, but you can stop being its fuel. This isn't about some grand, sweeping revolution. It's about small, deliberate, individual acts of defiance. It's about reclaiming your own mind from the algorithm. If this analysis has changed how you read the media, Don't just stop at understanding. Start acting. You do what you can. You control your feed. You control your attention. You control your engagement. That is where your power is. Once you see the strings, you can stop dancing to them. Subscribe for the next breakdown in this series.